Well, it only took 2 years, but we finally got another season of What If. So much in the franchise has occurred that has given this team more opportunities and possibilities to explore in terms of characters, settings, and narratives. The long gap might have to do with the amount of content that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has had to balance, but I'm not here to talk about that. It took me even longer to make this ranking, but I'm glad to finally do it. While there were some things that did not work for me in the first season, I still had a good time, and the same applies here. As usual, they take as many advantages as they possibly can from this wild multiverse to provide experiences that will last. It keeps the Marvel tradition of showing that anything is possible thanks to the characters and worlds that have kept audiences coming back. Call it a remix or a spin-off or a celebration of all things Marvel, but it is back to offer some twisted narratives that focuses on those that have not gotten much attention as others in recent times, while also expanding this universe's stories and lore. After so long, I'm diving back in to ponder the question, what if? Number 9. What if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster? This one is definitely a bizarre outlier, as this one was originally meant to be part of the first season, but was pushed back, which sort of explained why Gamora was part of the finale with no proper introduction. What's even weirder is that she isn't even the focus of this episode, rather it's about Iron Man instead. Instead of making it back to Earth when flying back to the portal during the first Avengers, he ends up getting flung to Sakaar and meets several characters from Thor Ragnarok. It seems like a fun enough premise, but the biggest complaints that many have had from the last season are on full display here, and I felt them more than ever. This was unfortunately my least favorite episode of the entire series, and it had lots of problems that prevented me from liking it. That includes poor pacing, rapid fire humor that made it more awkward than it should have, average voice acting, weird animation that felt off sync from the dialogue, and plenty of contrivances that rarely allowed me to take the story seriously. On the comedy, I was never bothered by Korg as much as others, whether it was him in Love and Thunder or the first episode of this season, but this was the first time where I not only found him incredibly annoying, but also pointless. It was just non-stop jokes from him, Tony and the Grandmaster, and it never made me laugh. With it being Jeff Goldblum voicing him again, I was hoping for some charm, but it was mostly just grating. Valkyrie was in this as well, but she was pretty okay. If there was some things to praise about it, is that there are some creative moments with the animation and the raise that happens at the end. Well, for the most part. The first couple minutes of the sequence was pretty awful, with constant cuts and odd camera angles that made it hard to follow and underwhelming at first. Out of nowhere, it improved and ended up pretty solid. It got more engaging with some imaginative sections and some surprises that made it a fun watch. That didn't help save it, with it having a cumbersome ending that shows Tony and Gamora killing Thanos with no real connection to the last season finale. As a whole, it was very underwhelming, and I give it a 6.2 out of 10. Number 8. What if Strange Supreme intervened? Picking up right where the last episode left off, with Doctor Strange from the last season recruiting Peggy Carter on a new mission that will end up leading to unexpected results, for better and for worse. He reveals to her that he has been keeping universe killers locked away, but needs her help to capture the one that got away. As she goes off, it is revealed that the one that got away is none other than Kahori, speaking in perfect English this time around and being in full control over Tesseract and Sonic the Hedgehog powers. The following is a massive spoiler, but another reveal is that Strange Supreme has gone off the deep end again and is actually gathering these individuals to restore the universe he lost back in Season 1. Since that risks a lot of individuals dying, so they decide to do what's right and set them free. What plays out is that 3/4 of this episode is one long action sequence, so it throws a lot at you. One of the things that will definitely set a lot of people off, and which I can agree with, is that Strange goes back to his malicious ways after saving the multiverse last time. It makes his development feel pointless, but if he did not change, then this would feel consistent, but he didn't, which causes some major issues here. It does make the best episode of the entire show feel slightly unearned, since Doctor Strange dies in the last second here while deciding to sacrifice himself to the demons possessing him. What gives this finale less of an impact compared to last time is that it has even less build-up. Season 1 built up almost all of its episodes to lead up to an Avengers-like payoff, while this time it only pays off 3 episodes. What does make the endeavor watchable is that it brings a climax to Peggy's arc to letting go of Steve again after receiving a hallucination meant to trick her. After seeing Kahori's mentor give her that smirk of pride was a nice little exchange considering what happened in her episode. Also, the action was very kick-ass. Sure, it's very over the top with Strange shooting energy blasts, Carter spawning Naruto-like clones, and Mist gotta go fast, using portals thanks to the Space Stone. During that army, we also get some bizarre and random cameos, like Corvus Blade, Hela, Surtur, Cowboy Loki, Vision, and more. It was also very hysterical seeing all those innocent people go up and down several times. And also, we get some quick cameos to some characters like Killmonger and Thanos, and it's just very clear that they could not get Michael B. Jordan and Josh Brolin to say a few lines, so we just hear them do some grunts, and as they come in and out. And sure, they've done it before where they brought a famous actor just to say something short, seeing as they couldn't do it this time with them. And also with all this, I don't care. Seeing Peggy and Kahori use all those weapons like Hela's helmet, Mjolnir, the 10 Rings, and the Infinity Stones was incredibly badass, as you see these two characters take down an epic threat with gleeful enjoyment. It also allows for some cool fights and unique animation play out on screen. It may have ended quickly, but it was an overall okay ending to another wild, crazy ride of a season. I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Number 7. What if Happy Hogan saved Christmas? In this bizarre standalone story that feels like a Tumblr fanfiction come to life rather than something that would be this public, this is basically this year's annual holiday special. In this one, where the timeline is admittedly wonky, Justin Hammer from all the way back from Iron Man 2 leaves prison to exact his revenge on Tony Stark during a festive party, and with the Avengers busy off doing their own thing, it is up to Tony's head of security, Happy Hogan, to put a stop to this. The episode is this season's equivalent to the Party Thor episode, and I like that one more because it was more laugh out loud hilarious, personally speaking. But all sorts of wild escapades ensue, from him trying to sneak up on terrorists, Maria Hill trying to figure out a plan, and Darcy being useful comic relief in the process. With Christmas pop culture references galore, I appreciate this episode for being simple fun and not trying to pretend to be something it's not, even if it feels like a lighthearted Marvel fanfiction. I can't really complain about it too much or say a lot about it, as it serves its purpose well despite not there being much to it. The climax does get pretty wild though, and it also gets gross and dark, but it's also part of the charm. The only actual criticisms I can give towards it is that the facial animations do sometimes feel unsettling, and the timeline of events is very unclear. It might not matter much in the end since it's not even in the sacred timeline, so events can be interchangeable. It's a harmless if uneventful Christmas story that can be easily enjoyed if one's in the proper mood. I give this one an 8.2 out of 10. Number 6. What if Nebula joined the Nova Corps? For sure, this was a way better premiere episode than that of the last season. With a Blade Runner visual inspiration and plenty of mystery, this was a decent start to this new collection of stories where Nebula tries to solve a case to save Xandar from destruction while also teaming up with some unexpected allies. Did I mention that in this version she joined the Nova Corps because Ronan betrayed Thanos? She was sent on a mission by Nova Prime to find some information on the intersections of the planet to keep it safe, with narration aplenty. For an episode that is shorter than 30 minutes, it feels much longer in a good way, as they pack in a lot of story and it's paced pretty well. It included appearances by Howard the Duck, who I wished played a bigger role in the MCU, and Korg, who I never minded, who's pretty good. As someone who has enjoyed the Nebula character more as time went on, I appreciated her getting an episode of her own and truly owning it. That's one of the things I like the most about this show is how it gives the spotlight to side characters with their own stories that allow them to build and expand in ways that they couldn't in live action, even with the many projects coming out. To my complaints, this episode does have plot contrivances as usual that prevents it from being great. Before I get to the big one, they chose Yon-Rogg from Captain Marvel of all people to help Nebula when they could have easily invented a new character or used someone else. I forget he even existed and couldn't tell it was him until I heard Jude Law's voice. It also felt very out of character for Nova Prime to turn a heel just for the planet where she could sacrifice Nebula and sound so authoritative. To the big one, I am not a fan of the constant double crosses and triple crosses in stories because it removes the agency, turns it predictable, and it doesn't feel natural, as there's no real setup behind it. Also, some of the facial animations were pretty awkward as hell. Aside from all that, it was an entertaining action-packed story that paves the way for the possibilities that will show up later on. I give this one an 8.4 out of 10. Number 5. What if the Avengers assembled in 1602? To continue the Captain Carter episode from this season was not something I had in mind, especially when the marketing seemed to promise something else. The story this time is that for unknown reasons, Peggy ends up being transported to a changed universe where the world is inspired by early 16th century history and cultures, and she tries to make things right. Along the way, she meets new Ultra versions of previous MCU characters that pose as threats and allies on her journey. Overall, it is still a solid, entertaining episode, but this is where the premise seems to falter a bit, as Carter has become the de facto protagonist of the series instead of it being a true anthology. It also makes this ranking feel a little awkward. Anyways, it does start with a sizable time jump that makes things quite jarring, as she has been working with this reality's King Thor, but right after Hela disappears, he puts the blame on her and claims Peggy an outlaw. It's weird that it starts off with this turn instead of showing his building frustrations on the incident. Loki and Nick Fury are helpers of Thor, with the latter assisting Peggy in secret. Also, Happy Hogan is a dangerous guard captain that still has his Purple Hulk abilities that he can control with no actual explanation. It has been revealed that the Watcher has been notifying her that he can remove Peggy from this universe anytime she wants, but she refuses from the good of her heart to save that world. She teams up with Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes, Ant-Man, Hulk, and Tony Stark to get Thor's staff to put things back to the way they were. One of the highlights of this story is that it continues to evolve Peggy's relationship with Steve, with her meeting one that is in a much better place than with the Hydra Stomper, but is still different from the main Steve that we all know. It's a unique angle that makes this journey stand out from her live-action series, as she might not get the old romance she lost and still wants, but she can still find her own purpose that makes life worth living. Aside from that, the action is creative and well animated, that gives us an old-fashioned swashbuckling vibe, even with it including some modern technology. Some minor story elements do feel contrived, including a bit of the end, but it has still provided me with a good time, even if I prefer more standalone stories. I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Number 4. What if Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes? Well, people were asking for the Avengers, alright. In this one, Yondu actually delivered young Peter Quill to Ego, which jumpstarts his plan to take control of the universe in the 1980s, and that era's group of superheroes come together to put a stop to him. That includes Hank Pym's Ant-Man, Bill Foster's Goliath, T'Chaka's Black Panther, Wendy Lawson's Mar-Vell, Bucky Barnes in Winter Soldier mode, and Thor by the end. On the good side, it's nice to see a true ensemble story in the franchise, and in one where they get along mostly without forced drama. The beautiful thing about a show like this is that we get to see a proper story that takes advantage of this existing shared universe by not having to worry about actors' schedules, having certain characters interact, and having them intersect in ways one could have never imagined, even though they share similar traits. Case in point, young Peter Quill and young Hope Van Dyne sharing the loss of their mothers at a young age while finding different ways to cope with it. This episode is packed to the brim with nice characters and action moments that make this one a standout. Also, I made two confusions with thinking Wendy was Janet and older Peggy was Maria Stark. The Guardians of the Galaxy have been truly influential because this is the second episode in a row that shows what could have happened if the team never got formed. It's also the second time where they bring back a character from the first Captain Marvel movie that I forgot even existed. My only complaints with this episode is that the action is not as exciting as it could have been with these characters, as it is just okay aside from the occasional cool scene. I thought both Wendy and Bucky were pointless to the overall story. Wendy doesn't even use many powers, and she's just there for quips and extra support, but nothing truly significant. The only reason Bucky was here was for that one scene at the cemetery where he was about to shoot Peter, and he was just around being serious and brooding, as he doesn't even fight anymore. Wonder why the Russians even bothered with him and the others being okay with him. The relationship between Peter and Ego was so similar to Mark and Omni-Man in Invincible, down to some of the dialogue, that it was kind of funny, to be honest. It was pretty refreshing to see serious Thor again, as though it was only for a little bit. Now I wish to see more of this team again, as their chemistry was quite nice. I give this one an 8.7 out of 10. Number 3. What if Hela found the 10 rings? Where to start with this one? It's an incredibly random concept that combines several separate ideas into one, but it surprisingly works incredibly well. I mean really well. Wow. Focus on Hela, the main antagonist of Thor Ragnarok this time around. Instead of being banished to hell like in the movie with lots of vengeance to spare, she gets banished to Earth while losing her powers after having a squabble with Odin. What could have been an easy rehash of the first Thor film, it goes in different directions that does so much more. It does the great thing of not only expanding on the character of Hela to make her a better character than before, but doing the same for existing MCU lore, which is impressive. It does have a similar theme to the first movie about acceptance and finding inner peace, but with wildly different execution. She gets banished to Earth in a different time period in ancient China, where she crosses paths with none other than Wenwu, the antagonist of Shang-Chi. Not only does this story combine Thor lore, but also Shang-Chi lore, with it even showing Ta Lo and its martial arts culture. Plus, it even has a helpful appearance by Morris. There she learns the way of their people and goes on a journey of inner peace and faces emotional challenges that end up being heavier than even she would have ever imagined. What carries this episode is not only the solid character writing, but Cate Blanchett's vocal performance, who sounds like she's having a ball while bringing in the depth she naturally does to her characters. The other thing to praise is how much they take advantage of the animation in environments and action scenes, as you can really feel the artist's touch in the flow and movements more than most episodes. It even feels like a painting come to life. I won't give it away, but the way the story ends is so satisfying and cathartic to what came before that I couldn't help but feel overjoyed. That's the plus side of a series such as this existing. I also thought it was very funny seeing Wenwu run in the air with those massive rings. I give this one an 8.7 out of 10. Number 2. What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? This is the first time one of these stories is a continuation of an episode from a previous season, with it progressing with Peggy/Captain Carter once again. It starts with a flashback that reminds viewers of her various appearances from before, including the post-credit scene that follows her and Natasha finding the Hydra Stomper with skinny Steve Rogers' somewhat young body with a beard on a loaded ship. Things get crazy when the controlled machine goes on an all-out attack, but after they snap Steve out of it, they go on a mission to find the Red Room to bring him down. Several things of note, such as how much of a massive improvement this was not only to the previous episode, but to the first Captain Carter episode, as it was my least favorite one of the entire series back then. but this one is my favorite of this season thus far. As of now, of course. Because holy moly, it was so good. The storytelling for the most part, the animation, the character dynamics, the drama, the stakes, the action sequences, they take almost every advantage they could have taken with this premise and make something hot out of it, thanks to them keeping it grounded to its most important essentials. Another thing is how likable the chemistry and banter between Peggy and Natasha, as it was very endearing and it didn't drag on. I could make a joke under quote-unquote sexualities, but I'm not going to. It was interesting to see Bucky live to be an elderly but healthy old man, with Sebastian Stan using the proper voice that actually made me believe he was old himself. Kudos. At first I thought that was Alexander Pierce until I noticed more of Stan's vocal cadences. I was surprised to see Melina from Black Widow appear and be maliciously evil, until I remembered that in this timeline she didn't have a change of heart that allowed her to sympathize with the other Widow assassins. Peggy and Natasha fight the army of young fighters and other mechanical menaces in this faux American suburban neighborhood, which leads them to a tense and exciting skirmish that uses its atmosphere and animation to glorious effects. It ends in a bittersweet finale that lands the right kind of emotion and satisfaction that benefited from them continuing a previous story. By the end of it all, it included another crossover tease with Peggy Carter once again to possibly tie things together later on, just like the last season. How interesting. My only complaint is the same as the other episodes, where it includes some forced awkward humor that doesn't gel well with what's being shown in display, but it's not as bothersome this time around. That's pretty much it. I give this one an 8.8 out of 10. Number 1. What if Kahori reshaped the world? From one great episode to another, we don't just get something unique that stands out from the rest of What If, but also the entire MCU. This one focuses on young Native American Kahori just trying to live her life with her brother and tribe until the Spanish army comes in to invade. As they try to escape, she ends up falling into a special glowing river that takes her to a different realm with its own society. As explained by the Watcher, it looks like the Tesseract crash-landed on Earth in a different time period on the natives' land, which caused a whole new chain of events. With her learning about this new society, she gains some abilities of her own and attempts to harness this newfound power to return to her land and save her people. What also makes this one stand out is that most of it is spoken in the Mohawk and Spanish language, which heavily helps in grounding the narrative even with all of its weirdness. Another highlight I want to give attention to is its musical score, as by not relying on familiar dialogue, it allowed the team to tell the story in a truly unique fashion. It sucks you into the world and the emotions of what the characters and the overall mood are conveying. While some frames of the animation are admittedly off at some points, it does give this episode an identity of its own with its use of colors, culture, and lighting to represent the warring sides of the conflict. Each side stands out from each other, such as the opening skirmish, the bits with the village, those with the Spaniards, the final battle, and the last confrontation with the Spanish Queen. They swelled me up with emotion and a sense of grandeur, from Kahori stopping those beasts in their path after running like Sonic the Hedgehog to kicking the asses of those soldiers with the aid of the natives. It just felt very satisfying. There's not much else for me to add, since it's fairly predictable. I would be gratifying, so I'll just leave it at there. Except for a surprise appearance from Strange Supreme, the version of Doctor Strange from the last season of What If, coming in to recruit Kahori at the very end. Looks like they're really trying to tie in the narratives for this season just like they did last time. I give this one an 8.9 out of 10. Here's to another balls to the wall season with stories of different kinds and results, as they went in many directions. Ever since the Marvel brand exploded in popularity decades ago, its fan base, adaptations, and opportunities have risen exponentially. The amount of stories and characters that have become beloved worldwide are thanks to thousands of artists and creative minds that have brought to life to the page and the screen back then and right now. Even when not everything goes as planned, many will still come back for more if there is something worth exploring. The amount of angles and corners that have populated the universe have something for everyone, including tone, narrative, subject matter, and more. This season fixed some of the issues I had, but others have kept some of the same. Without a doubt, it was as unpredictable as it could have been, as it went in different directions I never thought possible, so I appreciate that they thought out of the box and continued boldly. They expanded on characters in ways I didn't know even existed and did its job in adding more to it to feel more well-rounded and allow me to see the original source in different ways. It did its job in using its own creativity to inspire more from others. I preferred the first season since it had higher highs and was more imaginative and surprising overall. Not everyone can give these types of shows a chance, but it would be nice for more to be open-minded, at least for the highlights. It does have some of the best newer stories of the MCU that I can say. I like that I'm not going to know what's going to happen next, as anything could happen. Since the last 2 years, the franchise has added and expanded in levels that one can't even comprehend. That includes new types of stories and characters that What If could make good use of, not just for this season, but for future ones as well. It is for sure different, and it stands out from what comes out these days in the comic book adaptation space. As long as there's new material to enjoy, the inner Marvel fan in me will never ever fade away. The best way to appreciate things is to see it for yourself and not to impress a group of strangers. On to the next season and beyond. Go on forward forevermore.